I guess really the concept of life and death is couched in a tremendous amount of confusion and despair in the modern world. Certainly in Western society, at least in Eastern societies, I think there are deeper traditions about these things. But the whole concept really has to do with, why do people have to die altogether? And what is the soul? I mean, these are things that we need to talk about for 1,000 years, not for a few minutes. But, again, the idea is it is a world of illusion, and the soul is part of Hashem. And we learned that together in Genesis, where it says that he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. So the soul is part of Hashem, and it's eternal. And it comes down into this world for a very specific period of time and for a very specific purpose. And this is not an easy place. It's full of all sorts of challenges. And it's a world of tremendous concealment. We've been talking about that a lot. Hashem's presence is so concealed in this world. But recently, again, in one of our Zoom classes, I mentioned this last week in our Torah video on Parashat Vayera. I mentioned that the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, the author of Mesilat Yesharim, he says an amazing thing. He says that, because we were talking about tests last week in the Torah portion of Vayera, because the climax of last week's Torah portion was Abraham's 10th and final test, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. So we're talking about the whole nature of tests last week in our Torah video. The Ramchal actually says that one of the main purposes of a person being created and coming into this world is to be tested. Is to face the things that are difficult for us, to face the things that are somehow in opposition to our very nature, and to try and overcome them. So it's a different kind of an outlook on life, because there's one attitude like eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, and the whole attitude of like live it up. When people say live it up, right? There's also an expression in Hebrew, lasot Chaim, right? Live it up. People usually mean by that, like to party and to like have like a time of abandonment and no limits, and like I'm free, man. Like right. Janis Joplin, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose, and the whole thing, right? I'm living it up, right? But that's actually not really real. There's nothing real about it at all, because the challenge is is somehow, while we're in this world, for the soul to be able to connect with Hashem. That's the whole challenge.
Yeah, well, isn't the life of the patriarchs are, if we can apply them, they are a blueprint for our own lives, because when you look at we're going to see very soon in the upcoming Torah portions that this idea continues. These tests, which of course, test has a negative connotation when you grow up in high school and you're always dreading a test all the time, because a test, you take it and then you're worried about the grade. The test is a trial. It's a chance to learn and to fashion your soul and to elevate it another level, because you've learned something. And so we're going to see this with Yitzhak, and with Yitzhak, we're going to see this. He's already been tested, and we're going to see this with Yaakov and Esav. They in fact, the wrestling of the angel that Yaakov goes through, he comes to a realization that that's what life is all about, and drives home the point that all of these things come from Hashem. Amen.
The bottom line is that we're put into this world with a very specific calling, very specific amount of time, but the soul is eternal, and we're trying to find our way in this world. And the only thing that we take with us is deeds. That's what we take with us, And we believe, Torah teaches us, that there is a time when, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up. There's a time when Hashem will bring about the resurrection of the dead. Amen. So in the meantime, because of Adam HaRishon, because of Adam, and because of the whole confusion that came into the world, and everything is mixed up, good and evil are mixed up, and we have to choose the final rectification, I'm trying to condense here the greatest philosophical and spiritual and mystical works of Torah, and I'm trying to condense it into a neat little ball and flick it into the universe within seconds, right? The idea is that because of the fact that a person, all of us are part of Adam Rishon, part of Adam is in us, right? And we're continuing, as it were, his mission in this world. We're all affected by the reconfiguration of free choice. So ultimately, every single person has to die in this world. And it's, rather than look at it as being something morbid, rather than look at it as the end, which it isn't at all, it's the beginning of a whole new chapter. Just like a person has no memory of where they were before they were born. Some people do, I guess. But the fact is that we existed in that realm as well. But the idea is that the ultimate rectification of a person's soul is only in death. And so I'm saying it's a chesed, it's a kindness of Hashem, and that's again has to do with the whole concept of the stages of the yearly anniversary of the passing of a person, because every year a person, the soul grows higher and the body becomes less and less. And why is it that in Torah tradition, burial is supposed to be right away? You know, the ultimate honor for the dead is the burial should preferably be immediately, certainly within 24 hours, except for extenuating circumstances. But there's certainly the whole concept of like lying in state, you know, like a wake or like a you know, like how they have like political figures or leaders lying in state. That is such a terrible degradation to the soul of the person. It's horrific that they leave a person lying around. Like, how long was Queen Elizabeth out? Was it like weeks? Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I read like a week's later, they're still like carrying her from place to place. Like, what do you want from the poor woman? Because the Torah teaches that the tikkun, the rectification of the soul, cannot begin until the body begins to go back into the earth. And so the sooner the better. And then every year, again, the soul goes higher and higher, commensurate to the body becoming part of the earth. And then there is the seed within the body, the loose bone, you know, from which Hashem brings about the resurrection of a person. And so in the meantime, the difficulty on an individual level for every person is trying to connect with Hashem in this world through all the challenges and all the tests and all the illusions. But in the future rectified world, then the whole world will be elevated to that state at the time of the resurrection of the dead, before the whole reality becomes a spiritual plane of reality. But that is like the prophet talks about when Hashem wiping the tears from the faces and death being swallowed up forever. It's talking about that future rectified world. But in the meantime, part of the ultimate rectification for every person is that we have to go through this. That's how it is. And so we try to make the most hard time right now. Well, with apologies to all of our audience, in case the subject was too heavy, but I don't think it was dark in any way. I think
No.
It's really beautiful to have perspective. You know, whenever we are giving thanks to Hashem, we're thankful, we're grateful, we're celebrating our lives. We say Chaim, because it's all about life. It's a celebration of life in every way. But the fact is, we're tempered, like the Rabbi said at the funeral, like the Midrash says about the verse in Ecclesiastes 7:1, like all the great and holy sages are teaching us, we're tempered with the reality of understanding that, you know, it's transient and the soul is eternal, and we cannot be distracted by the illusions, and we have to make the most of everything, because that's really our mission in this world. And it's not something to be in any way downcast about. On the contrary, every moment that we're alive, we want to live for the fullest. But that doesn't. And by the way, when I said earlier about living it up, I don't mean that people shouldn't have a good time. I don't mean that people shouldn't celebrate within reason. I just mean that the main goal of our lives in the world as creations of Hashem, created in the divine image, is to realize that we're carrying something very special and holy, and to make it shine, and to, with the time that we have, it's all a loan, it's all a gift, and we want to make the most of it, so that we sanctify Hashem's name, and deserve the trust that He's put in us. So we want to wish our audience a life-filled week of joy, good health, safe and sound, and good news.